Have you ever heard of rap?
Yes.
So what's the first letter of rap?
Restate.
Restate. And then?
Answer.
Answer. And? Prove. Okay, cool. Restate and answer. Can those be put together?
Yes.
Can they?
Yes.
Yeah, how would you do that?
Yes, this is this because.
Huh? What did you say? Nothing? Yes?
When you restate the answer, you can put, like, when you restate the answer, you put in your answer.
So when you restate the question,
Yeah, when you're
you put in the, so would we say we work the question into the answer?
Yes.
So for example, something that you could do for ours up here, how did the environment impact Incan agriculture? Couldn't we just start here and say Incan agriculture was impacted by the environment, and you work your claim onto the end of that, right? And of course, that's the challenge. How do you seamlessly put your claim with the question, right? Is there a way you might be able to put the claim first with the question at the end, the gist of the question at the end? Sure. So that's where your writing style comes in. What do you prefer doing, okay? But certainly restating the question and writing the answer would be together in one sentence. It could be more than one sentence, sure, but a lot of times they end up just being in one sentence. Okay, and then prove. What two things are you doing when you prove your answer? What?
You are looking for evidence.
Okay, so cited evidence, right? Because you can't just throw evidence out because people be like, oh, according to who, right? You want to make it believable, more reliable, more trustworthy, so you're going to say who the source was. Yes?
And then explain it.
And then explain it. How does, connect the dots for them, right? Connect the dots for your reader. They're going to say, wait, this evidence, how does that prove it? How? That's what your explanation is. Explain how your evidence proves you right. Notice I keep using the word you, okay? Because your answer or your claim or your thesis is whose?
Yours.
It's yours. Okay, so this is your answer. Meaning it doesn't come from the text. It doesn't come from that document set. If we were in 5th period and you guys were working on the response to the prompt there, remember what was that for? The leftovers book,
Yeah.
right? You're not going to pull it directly from, your answer doesn't come from the text that you're supplied. Your answer is what you think, okay? In that case, the inference you made, and then you support it with evidence from the text. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. What else am I forgetting here? Oh, so this is what we used to use. So what do we use now? Has anybody seen the updated one?
No.
So they changed it to race.
For like
Oh, yeah.
first graders now.
Well, I mean, it really doesn't change much, does it? Because the R is still,
restate.
the A is,
Answer.
the C is
Cite.
cite, right? So cite what? Cite your evidence. Cited evidence.
Explain.
And then explain. So we just broke it out from the prove, right? These two together still mean prove. How do you prove? You prove it by using cited evidence, good evidence, that actually goes with your claim. And of course, you're kind of checking on your own work while you're explaining. You're explaining to yourself and to your reader. And if, as you're writing, you're trying to explain your evidence, how it proves your point, and you're like, this doesn't really prove my point, well, then pick different evidence. Pick better evidence. Pick evidence that will support your claim. Or maybe that means your claim, what? If you can't support your claim with evidence from the text or from the document set, and that's what you're supposed to be doing, then maybe you need to come up with a new claim. Does that make sense? And I know everybody's so reluctant, oftentimes because you're in a hurry. I need to get done. You'll come up with a claim, and then you'll defend that claim even if it's indefensible. So as you're working through this, if at any point you got to stop and say, ooh, that doesn't really work, rework your claim. Go back and think about it again. Reword it, rework it, change it completely so that it is something that could be defended with cited evidence and that your explanation would make sense to your reader. Does that make sense? Here's another thing we can think about. The cited evidence. How have you guys been taught to work that in?
Like quotes?
Okay, so direct quotes.
Yep.
Direct quoting something. In your own words, like what? Paraphrasing?
Yeah.
Is that what you mean? So paraphrasing. So you're taking the information from the text and putting it in your own words. Now, in either of these cases, don't you have to let your reader know that it's not your thoughts?
Yes.
How do you do that?
Saying who wrote, what you're getting the information from.
Going to.
According to,
According to so and so, and then you could, if you say according to so and so, you're probably going to be paraphrasing, right? Now, if you're using direct quotes, you might say something like, name of person said, and then you put into direct quote, right? Again, in either case, you're going to have to go back and explain why those pieces of information or why those direct quotes support your answer. But yeah, absolutely. And there's other ways you could do than just according to, but you know, can you think of any other ways you could put it? Like in the article, maybe? Do we always know the author?
No.
Right? So we might just say, according to document A, or whatever it is. And then you'd be paraphrasing. Or there might be a piece of it that you want to pull out. So you could say something that's in effect. Can you put a direct quote inside of what you are trying to get across?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you can. It gets a little trickier, but by doing that, or by paraphrasing especially, it's easier to make it flow right. Does that make sense? As you're reading the sentence, it'll read easier. Have you ever read something and you get tripped up in the middle of it and you have to like reread it a couple of times because it doesn't flow well? So definitely it's something that you got to consider is just how well does the piece read? And then the last thing before I promise I'll turn you loose and shut up for the rest of the period. What is you? Out of all this stuff, what's you? So if you're restating the question, is that you? Are you the one writing that? Are you the one coming up with that? Is it your thought? Is the question your thought?
No.
No, but if you work it into your claim, doesn't it become your thought?
Yeah, yes.
So depending on how well you work it into the claim, your claim is your work, is it not? It's your thought. So the claim is yours. How about the proof? What part of the proof is yours? Is the evidence yours?
No.
Are direct quotes yours?
No.
What about if you paraphrase though and put it in your own words? Is it yours then?
No.
No, it's still not yours. So any of the evidence, whether you paraphrase it or not, the evidence, maybe I should change colors here, the evidence is not yours. But what about the proving part is yours?
Explaining.
The explanation. The explanation is absolutely yours. So your claim is yours, the evidence that you use to support it is not, but the explanation of the evidence is. Could you have, in one sentence, your explanation of the evidence, with the evidence, like evidence and explanation in one sentence combined? Like it might be a compound sentence or a complex sentence, but is it possible to have the evidence and you explaining why it supports your claim in one sentence? Absolutely you could. And in that case, maybe half of the sentence is yours and half of it isn't, right? But the point is you can mix them up a little bit if it helps it flow, if it helps you tell the story of why your claim is right. And then the question is, how long should it be? For something like this, where I'm looking for a paragraph response, and if you're using a mix of simple and compound or complex sentences, you might, maybe you've got two pieces of evidence, right? Maybe one of them you explain it in the same sentence, and then the other you don't. So that'd be 3 sentences, right? So 3 sentences for the prove, and then you'd have 1 sentence for combined restate and answer. So you might only have a 4-sentence paragraph, but if that 4-sentence paragraph includes restating and answering in 1 sentence, and you have one complex or compound sentence that's providing and explaining one piece of evidence, and then 2 sentences for the next, yeah, 4 sentences is absolutely possible. Or if you did it more with simple sentences, you might go to 5. Or maybe you have just an extra sentence of explanation. So, but yeah, 4 or 5 sentences is probably about right. So I noticed a couple of you might already be typing responses in. Today, the little bit of time you have is not enough time for you to go through the whole process. I told you I was going to give you Monday, right?
Yeah.
What do you do before you do your writing?
Read.
Pre-writing.
Pre-writing.
What do you do before you can do your pre-writing?
Read.
You got to read the resource. And then what is pre-writing?
Like a rough draft.
No!
I did that.
Pre-writing is not just a rough draft. It could include a rough draft. But on your rough draft, aren't you writing?
Yes.
Aren't you legit writing a thesis statement, right? You're doing all of that stuff together, right?
Of course.
It's a rough version of your actual draft, okay? So pre-writing is what?
Stuff you think that could be important to put into your actual draft.
What you might do, right? What you might, if I can spell you, what you might write about. Yes, Ty, it's your ideas. You are brainstorming, right?
Of course.
Could your pre-write include you coming up with a thesis?
Of course. Yes.
How about multiple?
Of course. Yeah.
See which one you think's the best.
Yeah! Don't just write a thesis and say, yep, that's good enough, I'm going to go with it. Your pre-write should be strategizing. How am I going to go at this question? That includes multiple options for your thesis statement, and of course then the follow-through bit, okay, how am I going to support each of those? And you don't have to go into detail on each of those pre-write pieces for each of those thesis statements, but the idea is you'll have options. Okay, which is the best? It's just like we did in our group project. Remember a couple weeks ago for the last checkpoint? You guys each came up with a claim, right? And then you came together as a group and compared claims and evaluated those claims. Which claim do we want to take to the finish line? You can do that yourself, but that means you'd need to develop more than one thesis statement, yes? More than one answer. Have you ever done work?
Yeah.
Writing or not, but you've done work, and then later on you saw another way you could have done it.
Yes.
You should always be evaluating your work. Sometimes you're evaluating it while you're doing it, and you can change gears like, oh, you know what, I've got a better idea. Will that cause you to take more time?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Is that a bad thing?
No.
I mean, it could be if you're on a deadline, and then at some point you gotta say, all right, I've got a deadline, I've gotta get this going, which am I gonna take, and I'm just gonna go with it. But if you have time, if you have the option to do that, then do it, take more time. Come up with an extra, maybe not just a plan A or B, come up with a plan C. And work them all a little bit further before making a decision of which one you're gonna go with. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
Are you allowed, once you guys do your writing on Monday, are you allowed to have somebody look over it for you?
Yes.
When should you have them look over it? When they're done with their rough draft or before they're done with their rough draft?
After.
After. Because remember, what you write could influence what they write if they haven't already written it. Does that make sense? So help each other avoid plagiarizing each other by not sharing your work with them until after you're both to that rough draft stage. Once you've already decided this is what I'm going with, write the rough draft and then you can share it. You can ask for their input on more than just spelling and punctuation, right? If you're reviewing somebody's work, can you make suggestions to them about, hey, your evidence doesn't really jive with your claim?
Yeah.
Yeah, please, absolutely. So, when you guys are starting to write, I know a couple of you already are, don't hit submit, because I'll want you guys to be sharing these. I'm definitely gonna give you time to peer review,
Of course.
okay? So be tracking